What's up guys, Rex here. In today's video, I'll be going over all of the AMCAS traffic rules for both applicants and admissions officers for medical school. If you find any of this useful, consider giving the video a like, subscribing, and checking out some of my other videos on the medical school application cycle. I'll have some of those linked down below. So you can find all of these protocols on the AAMC website, and I'll sort of just be going through them quickly, translating them into common English, and maybe giving my thoughts as we go through. So on this website, I'll have linked down below. This talks about the application and acceptance protocols for applicants. So we can scroll down and they have them nice listed as rules. So basically, rule number 1, these are the rules. Number 2 is you can't lie about your application. Rule number 3 is submit things by deadlines. Rule number 4 is essentially keep your contact info up to date. Number 5 is interesting if this applies to you, that if you know you will be traveling during a key part of the application process, such as like around this time, April 15th, April 30th time period, make sure you actually formally designate someone with written instructions to act on your behalf. And you also have to communicate in writing, most likely, with all of the schools saying, this is my specific designee who can act on my behalf, doing these actions between these specific dates. Rule number 6 is to respond as promptly as you can to any interview invites you receive, whether you'd like to accept those or decline the interview invitation. Rule number 7 is essentially be on top of applying for all of your financial aid and scholarship stuff. Now we get into the rules that are potentially becoming relevant to you if you have some acceptances. So rule number 8 is asking you, and so it's interesting that a lot of these rules are kind of more like guidelines, to paraphrase Pirates of the Caribbean, that they ask you to do something. And so it's kindly asking that if you have acceptances that you know you're not going to attend, as soon as possible, let schools know before April 30th. Additionally, rule number 9 goes through that basically the rules are that by April 15th, you should not have more than 3 active acceptances, but if you can make decisions before then, please do so. And then by April 30th, you only can hold 1 active acceptance. So you have to narrow from 3 on April 15th down to only 1 school by April 30th. Rule number 10 is that if you have some wait lists that you're still on after April 30th, and then you get an acceptance from those wait lists, to be as prompt as you can in making a decision between those schools and follow whatever specific guidelines those schools set forward if you need to decline the acceptance or accept the acceptance within 5 days or something like that. Whatever the school's rules, you have to follow those. And rule number 11 is essentially a catch-all that if this has not happened in rule number 9 or 10, by the time you're actually matriculating to a school, whether that's like starting orientation or something like that, you have to have withdrawn all of your other acceptances. You're locked in once you matriculate to a school. So now let's go over all of the rules that admissions offices are supposed to follow. And so these are on another website. I'll have that link down below. This is the application and acceptance protocols for admissions officers. So we'll go through. Number 1 is essentially schools have to publish some rules and follow them. Rule number 2 is pretty long. Basically, it's that schools have to be prompt about giving out admissions decisions. They have to give out all of the early decisions acceptances by October 1st. So that is a set in stone date. Additionally, they have to be prompt in notifying the AMCAS actual system of any admissions actions they take between October 15th and March 15th within 5 business days. Then from March 16th to April 30th, that narrows down to within 2 business days, they have to share any sort of admissions actions with the AMCAS system. And then going forward from there, May 1st to the first day of class, schools have 24 hours to notify AMCAS of any changes in admissions actions. And additionally, this includes updates to something where like you got accepted initially, then you get into a dual degree program. Now, admissions actions can be anything that's either written or verbal, either going to a student saying you have been accepted, you have been waitlisted, you have been rejected, something like that. Or if a student is responding saying, I accept the acceptance, I decline the acceptance, any sort of change to your status, the schools have a responsibility within a certain time frame to notify AMCAS so AMCAS can keep track of all of that stuff. Rule number 3 is basically saying the first date schools can let regular MD applicants know about their decision is October 15th. Rule number 4 is that by March 15th, schools have to give out at least enough acceptances to fill their entire class. So that is an important thing to keep in the back of your head if you're thinking about where is the application cycle, that by March 15th, schools generally have given out most of their first round of acceptances, and then more of the movement comes with giving wait lists and movement on and off the wait list, stuff like that. Now, rule number 5 is a nice rule that helps out applicants, that schools have to be nice to applicants. before April 15th, they have to give at least 2 weeks for an applicant to respond to admissions offers, whether that is accepting it or putting it on deposit, something like that. Additionally, they cannot penalize applicants for holding other acceptances to other schools or holding waitlists to other schools. An example of this, they cannot say, all right, we won't consider you for scholarships until you withdraw all of your other acceptances. Schools are not allowed to penalize you for having multiple acceptances before April 30th. Now, rule number 6 is saying that after April 30th, they can narrow that 2-week period of responding to an admissions decision to only 5 days. They can narrow down, all right, schools can say, applicants, you have 5 days to respond to this admissions offer after April 30th. Typically, this would be someone coming off a wait list, so schools can accept someone off a wait list and say, you only have 5 days to decide whether you want to stay with your current acceptance or switch schools and now come to our school. Now this has an asterisk to it where if this is after April 30th enough that it is within 30 days of orientation, schools can lower that from 5 days to 2 days saying, all right, we are accepting you off the wait list. You only have 2 days to decide if you want to switch to coming to our school or not. Additionally, schools have to allow applicants after April 30th to put down some sort of letter of intent or deposit or both to reserve their spot at the school. Additionally, again, these traffic rules, more like guidelines, part of Rule 6 is asking schools to be considerate of applicants, knowing they're making very difficult decisions, and just have some patience with applicants as they're going through the decision process. Rule 7 is essentially saying that after April 30th, schools can do some other stuff to basically try to find out, are schools actually accepting their acceptance? And if they can make a good faith effort and say, I don't know if this student is coming or not, then they can withdraw those acceptance. So if you have not narrowed to just your one school by April 30th, or you have narrowed to that one school by April 30th, make sure you have communicated with the school you know you want to attend that you are formally accepting that offer and putting down your deposit and stuff like that. Because if schools cannot determine that, they are allowed to rescind your acceptance. Rule number 8 is that all of the initial deposits, at least until April 30th, need to be 100% refundable. Additionally, they cannot be more than $100. Furthermore, if they are for the school you actually plan to attend, that $100 initial deposit has to be credited to you towards paying tuition. Rule number 9 is sort of a be considerate to other schools, saying do your due diligence and try not to offer an acceptance to some student who has already fully committed and matriculated to a different school. Because even though you would hope students wouldn't do this, they could theoretically, if a school gives them the acceptance and writes that letter, even if they've matriculated to some other school, they can change their mind last minute, which can put the school they're switching from in a difficult position if they've already sort of told all of their waitlist applicants that we are no longer accepting students, we have our full class. So number 9 is sort of just asking nicely for schools to not be mean to other schools. Rule number 10 is essentially saying to safeguard all of the information of their students, both their admission status, so they can't tell other schools that someone has been accepted or declined. Additionally, especially safeguard all of the financial aid information, so they don't have to be saying we've offered this amount of aid. So that's very nice for applicants that they can trust that schools are not sort of colluding together in some mischievous black box way. Schools are supposed to be keeping that information private. And lastly, rule number 11 is also saying that letters of evaluation are meant to be kept private unless there's some weird state law where that isn't allowed. And specifically, they should never show this content in the letter of evaluation to the applicant, even if they've been accepted or declined. That information is meant to be kept private. All right, so those are all of the traffic rules for the AMCAS application, whether that is as an applicant or as an admissions officer. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, I'd love to hear about them down below. Consider checking out some of my other videos on the medical school application process. I'll have a playlist linked on the right. Consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell if you want to catch my uploads as they come out. As always, like the video if you like the video, dislike the video if you dislike the video. And until next time, don't be ordinary, go be great.